Hello, welcome back to another video. Two of the hardest things you can find in the wilderness or in the wild or out while you're camping or any survival situations are a cutting tool and cordage. At the end of this video, I will give you a quick bonus, but here are my 5 go-to knots. Okay, not knowing how to tie knots isn't the end of the world, but in a survival situation, it could waste valuable cordage. Whether you're setting up camp, hanging food, trying to secure something, knowing a good array of knots is a valuable resource to have out here in the wild. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 of my most used knots, the ones that I use personally. But before we start, there's a couple of things that you really need to be aware of. Firstly, we're going to talk about a bit of terminology. So the standing end is generally the main end of the cord, and this will be attached to your tarp, to a tree, whatever it may be. Generally, the loose end is what they call the running end or the working end, and they're the types of terminology we're going to use today. If we're tying a knot mid-line, then the running end or the working end will basically just be the end that you're working with. Also, there's 2 types of bend or twist that we do when we're tying knots. The first one is called a loop. Now, to create a loop, you just twist the rope over on itself and it creates a loop. Nice and simple. The second one we're going to talk about is what we call a bite. Now, a bite is as simple as folding the rope in half on itself. So that would be what we know as a bite. Now you've got those 4 things, now we can get into tying some actual knots. Please note one thing very important about what I'm going to show you today. None of these knots I would recommend for climbing. If you're a climber or you're going to be securing people or anything that's really, really important, please refer to either a climbing professional or take advice from somebody with expertise in that field.
The first knot that I'm going to talk about is not really a knot per se, but more of a loop on the end of a line. This is called the bowline. This is probably one of the most versatile loops that you can put on the end of a piece of cordage. The reason being is it will not change, i.e. it is fixed in size. It will not get bigger, it will not get smaller. The easiest way to tie a bowline is to make a loop in the standing end of the line by twisting the line. Then you take the running end, poke it through the hole underneath the standing end of the cordage, and then back in through the hole the same way in which it came out. All you do then is just pull the knot tight. A good indication to make sure you tied this correctly is you should have a small stub of the free end just inside the loop. Clove hitches are great simple knots for securing something. There are 3 ways to tie a clove hitch: using the running and working end and threading it through, twisting the hitch mid-air, and lastly you can tie them mid-line. Wrap the running end around the post, then cross the line and wrap it round one more time. Now with the running end, thread it back through the hole you've just made parallel to the standing end of the line. Pull both ends to cinch the knot tight. In mid-air, twist the 2 loops in the line the same way, so they look like a pair of comedy glasses. Now slide the second loop behind the first loop and drop it over the post or stump. Now cinch by pulling both ends. The midline way of tying a clove hitch is basically the same as I've just shown you, but about halfway down the line. Clove hitches are useful for a temporary hitch when moving things, starting off a lashing, when making a tripod or a shelter. They are also very easy to untie, provided they have not binded on themselves. Some people use clove hitches and then secure them with 2 half hitches. If you need them to be secure, this is probably the best way to do it. Probably one of the most useful knots is the Tautline hitch. This allows easy tensioning of guy lines, whether that be on a temp or a tarp. Very easy to tie once you know how, and even more crucially, very easy to untie. That is provided you use the quick release method that I will show you today. Wrap your line around whatever it is you need to secure it to, like a post, tree, peg. Now take the running end and make 2 wraps around the standing end, back towards your anchor point. This part is important. Don't work away from the anchor point or it will just fall apart when you try and tighten it up. Next, take the running end and wrap it round the line on the opposite side of your wraps. Take a bite and pass the bite through the hole and then cinch it up in the same way. This way you will have a quick release version of the Tautline hitch. The 4th knot that I'm going to show you is a stopper knot. This is used to prevent rope from slipping through a loop or a device, whatever you're using. The figure 8 knot is easy to tie, and provided it hasn't been compressed too much, is fairly easy to untie. It is also very useful to know at least 1 stopper knot. Form the running end of the line a bit like a figure 8, a bit like this. This is where the name comes from. Make sure the first part goes over the top of the standing end and the second part goes underneath of the standing end. Then you take the running end and poke it down through the hole at the end of the line and cinch it up. Once it's tight, it looks a bit like this and it gives you that iconic figure 8 look, hence where the figure 8 knot gets its name. Last but not least, we have the sheep bend. This knot is excellent for joining 2 ropes of different sizes, and a common scenario when camping, you could use it to secure the edge of a tarp where the grommet or the tie out point has become detached. While they do say it is used for joining 2 ropes of different sizes, I personally have never had any issue using it on ropes of the same size, but some do suggest this is not a reliable use of this knot. Most tutorials online, and this one is no different, use different rope size. For added security, you could perform a double sheep bend by passing 2 loops through instead of the 1. To tie a sheep bend, form a loop in 1 rope, the bigger one of the 2 if you are using different size ropes. Take the other rope, pass it underneath and through the loop, around the back of the loop and then tuck it under itself. This knot is ideal when you need to extend a line or tie ropes together, especially if they are different sizes. And as I've already said, this can be used for securing tarps if you've lost a tie out point. Now the Prusik knot is not really a knot, it's more like just a loop, but it is very, very useful to know. Firstly, you have to take a piece of cordage and create a loop. I use the fisherman knot for this. I would suggest you Google it if you're not sure how to tie a fisherman's knot. Once you've got the loop, you make a lark's head round a line that you're trying to connect it to. Instead of stopping there, you wrap it round 2 more times and it makes like a little barrel with a loop coming out of it. That is a Prusik loop. They will slide along the line very, very easily when they're not under tension, but the minute you apply tension to it, like a tarp or something like that, they will not move. The Prusik knot was originally developed for climbing. What climbers used to do was have 2 Prusik knots on a rope, and they'd stand in one, slide one up, use that to get up further, and then slide themselves up a bit further. So they are very, very good at what they do.
Okay, so there you have my 5 most used knots. Whilst they won't cover every eventuality, they certainly will cover the vast majority of them. And they're the ones that I use more often than not when I'm out in the woods. As I said, knowing how to tie the correct knots can save you quite a large amount of cordage. So if you are in a real life survival situation and you only have limited cordage, it could really make a difference. If you like what you see, please remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment if you've got a favourite knot. Let me know what it may be. Other than that, keep practicing, because you only get good at these things through practice, practice, practice. See you in the next one.